ourselves. So I'm Nico Ban.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Catherine.
Nice to meet you all. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Mr. Romera. Obviously, with this being the guidance show, I work in the guidance office.
And I'm Mr. Williamson, also in the guidance office for the guidance show.
Thank you, guys. All right, so let's get right into it. So there are two main questions that everyone has on their tongue right now. So what are you guys' thoughts on taking away the weighted GPAs?
I think that's a great question, and I know that definitely has been on a lot of minds, and I think that it's something that the administration is exploring. We're in the process of thinking about it, talking about it, connecting with the various constituencies. So whether that's, talking to students, talking to parents, talking to teachers. We're also in the process of reaching out to, different colleges and college admissions folks to see what their thoughts are. My own personal thoughts are that a lot of high schools are going in that direction. A lot of them have been that way for years. I used to work at admissions in a previous life before I was here. Mr. O'Mara did too. And there are a million ways that high schools calculate GPA. Some use a weighted GPA like we have traditionally. Others have never weighted their GPA. Some GPAs are on like a 4-point scale like ours are. Others are on a 100-point scale. Newton North used to be on a 9-point scale, right? So every high school does it differently. And from a college perspective, they're going to look at what is being sent from the high school, and they're going to look at the transcript, right? The GPA is a snapshot, but it's not the be all and end all. So regardless of whether we decide to, unweight the GPAs, keep them weighted, publish both, whatever it might be, from the other perspective, the college side of things, they're going to look at your actual transcript. They're going to look at how students are doing and what classes they're taking and what levels they're taking them at. So either way, the same information gets sent off to colleges and universities. And a lot of them are going to recalculate whatever we send them regardless. So, in my opinion, the upsides of unweighting the GPA are that it recognizes sort of everyone's strengths. I think that some students are phenomenal artists, others are great musicians, others are TV media rock stars, right? And I think that deserves to be recognized just as much as a student, doing well learning Shakespeare or calculus, right? I also feel like all of our courses are challenging, right? And I think that students taking the courses that are appropriate for them, whatever that level might be, means that they're rising to the challenge that is appropriate for that student. And I think that is important, right? And like I said, I feel like from the college side of things, they're going to do with the numbers that we send them, whatever they're going to do with the numbers that we send them, regardless of what we decide to do at our little Dover Sherburne High School here. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah. So Mr. Williamson just kind of tackled a lot of that, so I won't take too much time, but I do want to say that no matter what the situation, obviously this is, like you were saying, kind of like a hot topic right now, like change is difficult no matter what way you look at it. And so anything that feels different than what you're used to, immediately our body's just like, whoa, let's stop. And we think the worst, we think the negative, instead of kind of letting ourselves like take a step back and reflect on what it actually is. And like Mr. Williamson said, there's so many different types of GPAs. There's so many different ways that schools calculate this GPA, what they include in it, what they don't include in it. And it's a bold statement to say, but for people to say this will negatively impact your college admissions is just wrong. So I'll leave it on that.
Thank you. Those are some great points.
Okay. Mr. O'Mara, do you have any suggestions on how to choose a college?
Don't listen to anyone who's telling you what to do. So you're going to have your aunts, your uncles, your parents, your siblings, this person, that person say, oh my God, you'd be so great here. Oh my God, you'd be so great here. Or, oh, I have a connection here. We should go look here. That's all great, but you really have to kind of figure out what makes the most sense for you. And it could very well be none of those things. We live in a really lucky area here where, you can start the process without thinking about the actual school, but really the style of school. Are you looking for a school in the city? Do you absolutely hate the city? Do you want a school with a lecture hall of 250 people, or do you want to be in a classroom of 20 or even 10? So there's different kind of ways to look for colleges that fit you. One thing we do like to say, though, is that there's never a perfect fit. There's never kind of one school. Sure, you can have a school that you like the most, but I like to use the analogy, which Mr. Williamson will probably roll his eyes at me for, but I like to use the analogy of like choosing a college is like choosing a jacket. Like you might have more than one winter jacket, you might have more than one spring jacket, and they all fit. They're all going to work and they're all going to do the job. It just depends on what you're looking for in regards to when you're looking, how you're looking, and what you want out of college.
Yeah, I think I would echo all of that. I think, the pandemic has changed things a little bit, but not all that much. I think that colleges have done a really nice job overall of really, updating and beefing up their online presence in terms of virtual tours, virtual information sessions. And it's actually one of the sort of interesting little silver linings of the pandemic is that you can now explore a college in California just as much as you could explore a college in Boston. There really isn't a complete substitute for being on a campus and walking around and getting a sense of how you'd feel, but you can on a Saturday, go to an information session at a school out on the West Coast and be able to start that process a little bit. I think, and that's a great way, now for maybe a sophomore who, you don't necessarily need to do any of this yet. But if you're curious, there's no harm in, joining an online session for an hour on a, Tuesday evening or something like that. So, getting out there and sort of seeing like, what even does it all look like? What is the sort of lay of the land? And the more that you kind of look into it, the more you'll get a sense of what do I like? What am I looking for? What do I feel like is an interesting point that these people are making at various schools?
Thank you.
Now, you may have already answered this question, but what do you think is the most important factor when applying to colleges? Grades, sports, or extracurriculars?
Yeah, so I think you're going to college for the academics. So the first and most important thing that any of these colleges are looking for is to see if you could be academically successful there. That doesn't mean that that's the end all, but it's certainly the first thing they're looking at. That transcript is really that key piece of information that the schools are looking at. And when they're going through the rest of the application is the idea that they're looking for reasons to admit you. They're not looking for reasons to deny you. And so they're truly kind of trying to see what jumps out at them. So yes, they want to see that rigor or that's an appropriate level for you. And they want to see that success in school, whatever that success looks like for you. That's the first thing they're looking at. And then they start to look at all those other things. What are you involved in? What is your leadership? What are some of the things you've done in school, out of school? All of kind of that extra stuff is like the guts of the sandwich and makes the process more fun for them.
I like to think of it as sort of like, they're looking at trying to find out what makes you interesting, sort of beyond the transcript, which I would agree is sort of the most important part of this whole puzzle, because they want to make sure that you are going to be able to come to their school and do well and succeed. And then after that point, it's what do you bring to the table? I think that colleges are evaluating each individual student, but they're also building a community, right? They want to make sure that they have enough students to fill their biology classes and their, history classes. They want to make sure that they have enough folks to play in their orchestra or play on their football team. And they're bringing people together from all over the place, all over the world. And they want everyone to get along and be able to learn from each other. So a lot of what's important about the whole process is not just about what's important about your specific application, but what is important about their college as a whole, which is a tricky answer because that is beyond outside any of our control. But it's also the reality of things, right? And so that when you feel like you find a college that is a perfect fit for you or a great fit for you, maybe not the perfect fit, but that jacket that fits really nicely, if it doesn't work out for you and they don't accept you in the end, it may be something that has nothing to do with you or your application. You know, it very well could be something about kind of what they want their overall class to look like, and there may just not be enough room for every student who applies who would do really well there. I like to say, like, it's a very personal process, but it's important not to take it personally.
All right. Well, on a little bit of a different note, let's talk about COVID. So how do you guys think the school is handling COVID? And do you think there's anything they should do to improve their rules and policies, or do you think it's going well?
Do you want to tackle first? Or you want me to go?
I can go first. I mean, I think something that I wish we were doing more, honestly, was, which is kind of to answer your question, is I feel like we haven't been like celebrating our successes enough, which is such a guidance counselor answer. But I was just talking about this morning with my colleagues here in guidance, that in 9 days from now, we'll be at the 1-year anniversary of when we first had to leave, right? Like when a school closed down at the beginning. And so this has been basically a year. And for all of the talk sort of like nationwide in the news about like the lost year of learning, like we're doing a really good job. It's not my favorite year of work that I've ever had. My guess is for most students, it's not your favorite year of school you've ever had. But I'm really proud of what we've done. You know, I'm really impressed by everyone, you know, parents, teachers, students, because we came to the table, you know, and we figured something out that works, you know, and I don't feel like we've lost a year of education. You know, maybe some classes are behind a little bit where they were, and you know, maybe some things could be better than others, sure, but I think as a whole, like I'm really, it sort of is like, you know, given me a lot more faith in like humanity than, you know, which seems a little bit extreme, but we really did come together to make the best of a really tough situation. I don't think we celebrate that enough.
Yeah. And I think change also, when it comes to like a structural change, whether it's a business, a school, or whatnot, 99.99% of the time moves at a snail's pace. And everyone was thrusted into something that we never expected. And I think the amount of times that before all this, we would joke like, oh, it must be nice to be able to like work from home, but that's never something that we'll be able to do. And then here we are, everyone's home on Wednesdays and everyone's still working, and we're still making it through kind of the school year, like Mr. Williamson said, really successfully. I think it's kudos to all of the teachers because of the intense amount of work that they've put in, but also kudos to all of you and the students who have just kind of gone with the flow and adapted and done what they needed to do to make it work. So it's not necessarily something that we could be doing better, because I think with all of the cards that we've been given, we're doing pretty darn well.
Okay. Although sophomores weren't allowed to take the PSAT through the school this year, do you suggest they take one to see what they're like in terms of standardized testing?
Yeah, so current sophomores will have the opportunity to take the PSAT, in October of next year as a junior. And that's exactly what it is. It's a practice. And so it is giving you that practice of what it feels like to do a standardized test before you're taking the actual SAT or ACT.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in general, you know, when it's not sort of a COVID year and we don't have to worry about sort of the number of students in the building or in a classroom at the time, you know, we have allowed sophomores to take it. You know, it's been an option. I've never been a huge proponent of that in general. You know, I think some students really want that, and that's fine, but the test is designed for juniors, right? So if you're taking it sophomore year, there are things in math, for instance, that maybe you haven't gotten to yet, you know. Maybe, you know, you're you're not quite there in terms of like your English preparation. You have another whole year plus of English before you're actually taking the SAT. If you are a student who loves taking standardized tests, like, okay, go for it in those years. But I don't think there's much to be gained from that you couldn't also gain just from doing a practice test on your own, or taking, doing the SAT packets that they tend to give you in math class anyway. I think that it's an option, but for me, it's not an option that really, you don't get a ton of bang for your buck for it. So for me, not being able to have sophomores take it this year because of the pandemic wasn't the end of the world. I feel like it's not really designed for that purpose. And, sometimes adding another test to somebody's life is an unnecessary stressor that seems like you take enough tests.
Thank you.
Great. So do you guys have any suggestions on how students should balance their school life and their social life so that they maintain like good grades and are able to have fun outside of school?
That's probably one of my favorite questions, because that's exactly what I think I push for students to do, is finding that balance. I think that we are moving in a great direction as a school to think about what our classes are that we're taking. Are you taking an honors level course just to take an honors level course, or are you taking that class because you genuinely enjoy it? And thinking of things like that, like Mr. Williams said earlier, how we want students to feel balanced and well-rounded. And part of that is it comes on your transcript, and then it's also understanding what that is at the detriment of. Like, higher level courses are probably going to have a little bit more homework. And so if you can maintain that, sure, go for it. But if you have dance class for 4 hours a day after school, like, there's only 24 hours in the day and 8 of them should be done sleeping. So you really have to look at your overall schedule and figure out what's important. And the other thing that I always say is, if you're getting home from school Friday nights and you're doing homework until Sunday nights, that's not the right schedule for you. That's not the appropriate level of rigor that you should be experiencing, because that doesn't sound like a very fun weekend to me. I like to shut my computer Friday afternoon and then not open it back up until Sunday night, maybe even Monday morning if I can. You really need to create those boundaries. And I think this year we're seeing a lot more of that, because we're learning from home, we're learning from school, we're working from home, we're working from school, and really establishing those boundaries of, you know what, it is 9:30, I have been doing homework for 3 hours, my computer is shutting, and that's it, type deal. I know that's easier said than done because I've already gone through high school, but finding those times where you can shut off and just hang out with friends, hang out with family, watch a stupid show that you've been wanting to watch, just to kind of do a mindless activity, is so important.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. I don't know if I have a ton to add, and I do sort of hope that, another benefit of, the lack of a better word, of this pandemic is that people have really learned more about themselves and learned about the value of sort of taking things a little bit easier. I think that in some ways this has been an incredibly difficult year for everybody. And in other ways, there is sort of less to do or less we can do. And it sort of has forced people to take a breath here and there. And I hope that some of that continues. I hope that some of the, ideas of having, I've actually really enjoyed the idea of having the Wednesdays this year to like kind of catch up on things, work with teachers. It ends up being my busiest day of the week because students aren't necessarily in class all day. So I have a lot of meetings, but I think from the student perspective, I've heard a lot of folks saying like, I really enjoy having that chance to, take my time, really like dig into something I'm interested in, and experience that. So I'm hoping that some of those sort of like internal messages that we've sort of gotten this year do continue, because I think that is hugely important.
Yeah, Yeah, that everything you guys just said makes a lot of sense. So thank you. Now, what is your favorite part of being a guidance counselor? And that can be just anything. What is with a school or meeting with people? What's your favorite part?
My guess is we're gonna have the same answer, but it's you guys. You know, whenever I answer a question like this, I start to get a little emotional because like my job's exhausting, but I love it. I love coming in every day and talking to students and talking through, you know, what's going on in their life. Like I said, I used to work in college admissions, and the thing that I enjoyed about that job, but was also the most frustrating, was reading all of the college essays and learning about the kids and how excited they were about something, or, you know, the tough times they were having. And all I wanted was to actually talk to the kids about it and to say, you know, what's going on? Like, how can I help? You know, give somebody a high five when they've had something that works really well for them. And that is by far my favorite part of my job. It's getting to talk to students, even if it's just like about silly little things. You know, I had an amazing conversation a week and a half ago about like just the education of students and like how school is run, and, you know, what that has looked like over the past, you know, 200 years. You know, I had a weird conversation with a student the other day about like dolphins and, you know, just random stuff, but also the important stuff, you know, that in the moment, talking about education was really important with that student. Talking about dolphins was really important with that student at that moment, honestly. So it is you all that make this job worth having. Obviously, without students, there would be no need for a school counselor, but it's you guys that get me excited to come in pretty much every single day.
Definitely. I chuckled the first time I read the question because in my mind, all of the things that are my favorite part of the job are none of the things that are on a guidance counselor job description. So you'll see all the things that we do and we're supposed to be doing, and those are all interesting and fun and kind of stimulating in the mind. But like Mr. Williams had said, that the things that I like the most are just like having those random conversations or having those breakthrough moments with students who may be going through something a little bit more difficult than some of their classmates, and then providing a space where they're allowed to be mad, they're allowed to be upset, or they're allowed to be really happy, and fostering that space. And I know that sounds pretty cliche, but it's really, high school aged humans are fascinating. You are all fascinating, and you're all so different. And how awesome is it that we get to have those conversations with people that age every single day, and not have to discipline you, not have to be your parent, not have to grade you, but really just provide kind of an opportunity for a relief from all of that.
Okay. How often do you think students should meet with their guidance counselors? And do you think there's like a certain amount of times that people should meet if they don't?
So I think it really depends. And I know that that's not a concrete answer. Some people can navigate high school successfully on their own, and that's totally fine. And some people need a little bit of extra TLC along the way to get to that same graduation point, and that's also fine. So it definitely varies. Obviously, we tend to see our juniors and seniors a little bit more as they start to think about post-grad opportunities. And sometimes when I'll have a conversation with a grade 9 student, they're kind of like, who the heck are you? And like, what's your angle type deal? Because exactly, like, I'm not grading you, I'm not disciplining you. So they're like, why are you taking 10 minutes of my time away from me? But we're just trying to like kind of provide that rapport that will continue to grow over the years. So there isn't one answer here. It could be just 2 or 3 times freshman, sophomore year, or grade 9, grade 10 years, and then a little bit more junior, senior, or it could be much more than that. Sometimes it varies. Sometimes I'll see a student every single week their sophomore year, and then not till senior year. And that's also okay too.
Yeah, agreed. You know, it's very dependent on the student, their own situation. That said, you know, I love seeing all of you. So once we're allowed to, like, you know, be near each other again, come give me hugs all the time, please.
Any conversations are better than doing emails. I say that over and over again. Like, so I'd so much rather be walking the hallways or taking a lap around the track if you need to kind of have that movement break. That's so much more enjoyable to me than just responding to emails all day. So moving forward, if you ever need a movement break and you just want to go for a lap around the track, I got to close my rings every day. So I'm all for it.
All right, Mr. O'Mara, Mr. Williamson, thank you so much. Great talking to you guys.
Of course.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.